Welcome back to another episode of Al-Shaqar Al-Satlana. I'm Dan Diker, and today, the Gaza ceasefire, has it become the Gaza tunnel fires, with Hamas terrorists stuck meters underground trying to debate whether they're going to keep fighting or whether they'll give up their arms. Join us today on this episode of Al-Shaqar Al-Satlana. Khaled Toameh, the Gaza ceasefire has imploded and has become the tunnel wars between Hamas and Israel on Israel's side of the Gaza Strip. What an irony.
Yeah, well, Dan, it seems that, Hamas is like, oops, we forgot about, 300 or 250 of our members who are trapped in the tunnels in southern Gaza and who happen to be under Israeli control. And now you see the Hamas leadership running to the Egyptians, the Qataris, the Turks, and other mediators, begging them, we want a safe passage for our people. We want them out of the tunnels. It looks like it's growing into a crisis for Hamas. You have, on the other hand, Palestinians in Gaza, the families asking the Hamas leadership, why did you abandon them? Why did you forget about them when you signed the ceasefire agreement? So it's really become a big issue for many people in Gaza. Hamas, officially Hamas is saying, look, the terms or the words surrender and raise a white flag and hand over our weapons do not exist in our lexicon, in our dictionary. And we will just stay there. It's better to die than to, hand yourself over to the Israelis. Israel, on the other hand, is saying you only have two options, to die or to surrender. I mean, Israel addressing these guys in the tunnels. We saw that yesterday, some very senior Hamas people who were commanders who were hiding in the tunnels. I mean, they tried to run away and they were intercepted by the IDF and they were killed. We're talking about, the commander of the Rafah battalion. We're talking about his deputy. We're talking about the son of Ghazi Hamad. Ghazi Hamad, a senior Hamas negotiator sitting in Qatar. What's interesting, Dan, is that this is Ghazi Hamad, who 2 or 3 weeks after October 7, he went on Lebanese TV and he announced there will be a second and a third and a fourth October 7. He basically said, Hamas will continue to carry out massacres against Israelis. And here's his son now, killed while hiding in these tunnels. So this whole issue of the tunnels, has become a big issue. Hamas is trapped in its own tunnels right now. It's very embarrassing for the terror group. And let's see how things work out. But, we're still talking about dozens of these guys who have been abandoned by their own organization inside the tunnels. They're running out of water. They're running out of food. And they don't have any other, supplies. And we see that almost every 2 or 3 days, some of them emerge from these tunnels and try to run away. And the IDF, of course, is waiting there for them.
Khaled, it's an incredible reversal of fortune when you think about the fact that Hamas had kidnapped 250 Israelis, Jews, Christians, and Muslims, put them deep underground, and now 2 years later, they're trapped in the very tunnels of their own making. This does not play well for Hamas in the Arab world as well. I mean, the Arab world sees Hamas from a perception standpoint. They look very weak. There they are, captured the son of Ghazi Hamad. It's probably no less important than the death of the commander and the deputy commander of the East Rafah Hamas forces. That here Ghazi Hamad's own family has been killed in following his statements of the next October 7th and the next October 7th. From an Arab world standpoint, Hamas very much looks defeated at this particular moment, would you say?
Well, I mean, I would agree with you that from an Arab world perspective, that could be partially true. But from a Palestinian perspective, I'm sorry to tell you, Dan, this looks good for Hamas, and I'll tell you why. Here are many Palestinians, including Hamas, saying, "Oh, you see, our fighters are trapped inside the tunnels. They will not surrender. They will not come out of these tunnels. They'd rather die in order to preserve their dignity. They want to become martyrs." So this is how Hamas is marketing it. That's number one. Number two, Hamas is saying they're actually boasting of the fact that the son of a senior Hamas official was killed, because Hamas is saying, and other Palestinians who support Hamas, they are saying, "Oh, you see, you used to say that Hamas officials and their family members are in five-star hotels and their sons are roaming the streets of Europe and going to nightclubs and restaurants. And here is the son of a very senior Hamas official who is killed inside the tunnels. And he is like the third son of a Hamas official to be killed in recent weeks or months." So Hamas is actually using this in order to score points with the Palestinian street. And for some Palestinians, it does make sense, and they do buy it. Add to this that you have Al Jazeera. Al Jazeera, to remind you, the Qatari-owned network, TV network, which is an official mouthpiece of Hamas. Almost every night in Arabic, you see programs glorifying these guys who are trapped in the tunnels, calling them heroes, and praising them for not surrendering, praising them for remaining steadfast inside the tunnels without food, presenting them as a model for sacrifice and for martyrdom, and to the younger people inside Gaza. So this is Al Jazeera also playing a very important role. So as you said before, yes, in the Arab world, it is seen as a sign of weakness. Among Palestinians, it's seen among many of them as a sign that, Hamas is steadfast, and these Hamas fighters, they are willing to fight to the last person inside Hamas, and they will not surrender, and they don't want to give Israel the victory image. This is very important, Dan. It's all about, as you keep pointing out, it's all about perception. And the last thing Hamas needs is, Hamas terrorists walking out of these tunnels with in their underwear and with their hands raised high. This is very bad for Hamas. Hamas knows that once you have images like that, you've handed Israel the image of victory that it wants, and you've actually destroyed Hamas's reputation or image, not only among Palestinians, but in the entire Arab and Muslim world.
Khaled, this moment reminds me of the importance of Israel taking advantage of a situation in which it has cornered Hamas fighters underground, notwithstanding your very incisive comment about Hamas using this as a moment to promote jihad, defensive jihad, fighting until the last drop of blood and fighting for liberation. This is a part and parcel of the entire structure of jihad. And the victory of jihad is the victory of survival of those who are fighting for liberation and to defeat the non-believers. Now, having said that, we know that the Yasser Abu Shabab and other families and clans in Gaza who are cheering, in my assessment, for Hamas surrender, this is the moment that they need to be mobilized for them to be calling in Arabic for the surrender of Hamas. It's an important moment. We know that some of the Hamas, at least one or two Hamas fighters, were turned over to the Yasser Abu Shabab family when they emerged from the tunnels.
Yes, in the last, I would say, 3 or 4 days, Dan, I've been hearing reports from people in Gaza that these anti-Hamas militias, including the Yasser Abu Shabab militia, have actually intensified their operations and their activities in areas controlled by Hamas. Even Hamas has hinted at this. Just 2 days ago, Hamas announced that they intercepted one of these cells of an anti-Hamas militia as it was on its way to kidnap or arrest a Hamas member inside Gaza, and Hamas claims that they executed these guys. But this does show that there is increased activity by these anti-Hamas militias. We still don't know, Dan, how strong these militias are. We don't know how many members they have, but we do see that they are increasing their activity, and this is something that is worrying Hamas. We have seen videos of Hamas members being captured or surrendering to these militias, the Yasser Abu Shabab militias. We've seen confessions on video. This is all very bad for Hamas. When the Yasser Abu Shabab militia presents a Hamas prisoner, and he is bad-mouthing Hamas and saying that, we made many mistakes and all that, this doesn't look good. These militias, by the way, they are finally endorsing the Tuda'ah, the perception warfare. And they know that these videos do have an effect or an impact on the Palestinian population.
Right, absolutely. And as you mentioned, Khaled, Al Jazeera, Qatar, Doha, very important influencer here behind the scenes. The Qataris are funding $1 billion a year through the Qatar Aisha Aid Foundation for humanitarian aid. I am quite certain that they're trying to funnel some aid through Gaza City from the west into the tunnels to help the Hamas trapped terrorists. But Qatar continues to play together with Turkey, whose activities it's funding, also in terms of relief and humanitarian operations inside Gaza, as well as, believe it or not, a direct line from Gaza to Jerusalem, which you and I have talked about. Many of our viewers are unfamiliar with this direct connection between Gaza as a perceptual concept and the ultimate neo-Ottoman fight for Jerusalem. Both Qatar and Turkey are very, very active using the Gaza situation to mobilize jihadi and Islamist appetite for the real prize here is the prize in Jerusalem. And we're seeing a tremendous amount of activity, ongoing activity by Turkey and Qatar in Jerusalem.
It's not new, Dan. These two countries you mentioned, Turkey and Qatar, for many, many years, they have been trying to establish what I call bases of power in Jerusalem. The Turks, through several charities, Islamic charities, and by sending many Muslim pilgrims to Jerusalem, to the Al-Aqsa Mosque, and Qatar by funding several projects, including tourism projects, by the way, in East Jerusalem. So you do see some kind of a competition, I would call it, between Qatar and Turkey. Look, Gaza is a station to reaching Jerusalem. At the end of the day, these two countries know that if you have a foothold inside Jerusalem, you have leverage with hundreds of millions of Muslims around the world. They know the importance of Jerusalem. They're not going to go for Mecca and Medina because that's under the Saudis and they don't want to get into trouble with the Saudis. But they do see an opportunity over here to have some kind of, even if it's a symbolic presence in Jerusalem, at the holy sites, the Islamic holy sites in Jerusalem, that that's very important for them. They understand the importance of it. And that's why we have seen increased activity inside Jerusalem, and I'm referring to East Jerusalem, over the past few years. Now, in the last few months, or since the ceasefire went into effect, we see both countries, Turkey and Qatar, spearheading the so-called humanitarian effort, or aid campaign, the international campaign to provide humanitarian aid to people. Just yesterday, there was a report that Qatar just sent thousands of tents into Gaza. Now, this is all not only for humanitarian purposes, Dan. These two countries have an interest in keeping Hamas in power, because if they lose Hamas, they will lose a center of power. They know that Hamas, which defines itself, by the way, as a branch, the Muslim Brotherhood wing in Palestine, they know that if they lose Hamas, they will lose control over a very important region. And they know that, Hamas is their puppet, Hamas is their agent, Hamas is their proxy. They can always rely on it. These two countries, once they are involved with Gaza, that means we are going back to October 6th. That means Hamas will continue to rule Gaza with the help of these two countries. Now, it's very important, Dan, to note that meanwhile, I don't see other Arab countries being enthusiastic about sending troops to Gaza or even about getting involved with Gaza. You see some kind of a cooling down, I would say. The Arabs are withdrawing in many ways and leaving the stage only to Qatar and Turkey. Remember all that talk by the United Arab Emirates and Egypt and Islamic countries such as Indonesia and all that? Where are they? And Azerbaijan, and where are they? We don't hear that anymore. I mean, there's no more talk about sending troops to be part of the international stabilization force. So we see a retreat, and Qatar and Turkey are filling the vacuum, and this does not bode well for the future of Gaza.
And Khaled, I'm so happy that you brought up the issue of the International Stabilization Force, and it really points to the Trump 20-point plan. You and I on this program have been saying for weeks that there is virtually no chance that any Arab force other than Turkey would provide any armed men to go and disarm Hamas and demilitarize Gaza. The only force that is capable and willing to do it is the Israel Defense Forces. And what we're seeing now, Khaled, 2.5, 3 months after the American headquarters, or the American-sponsored international headquarters in Kiryat Gat in southern Israel was established in order to implement stage 2 of the Trump 20-point plan, which, by the way, we're still in stage 1 because there are still 2 bodies that are being held by Hamas. But notwithstanding that point, we have been saying on this program, and I want to mention this, that there is no international stabilization force. It doesn't matter that it was endorsed by the United Nations Security Council. It doesn't matter any other international body, because we know that there is no body, not in the Arab world and not in the international scene, that will disarm Hamas forcibly. And this is a very important point because it plays again into the understanding of jihad, which the West is still not up to date on all the elements that are involved in this type of Islamic warfare. What has happened, though, Khaled, and I think this is an irony of the entire 20-point plan, of the entire showdown that continues in Gaza, is that the more that this standoff continues and that Israel and Hamas are still fighting, there is no real ceasefire. It's a nominal ceasefire. It's low-intensity warfare. Gaza is divided into 2. The U.S. and Israel control eastern Gaza, and the Hamas still controls western Gaza. The plan is that the many hundreds of thousands of Gazans will move to the Israel and U.S. secured side of the Gaza Strip and leave Hamas completely cornered and isolated. Now, having said that, what's critically important here to understand is the larger picture by which this entire structure is ending up backfiring on the Trump plan itself and on Israel. And here's the essential point, that the Saudis and the Emiratis have said that they are really stepping back in terms of their connection with Israel. And we saw that with the Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. When he came to Washington, he did not advance the normalization intentions with Israel at all. And the administration, while they promised the F-35 sale, they did not complete the sale. They did not announce a current sale. The point here being that the more this standoff continues, the more that even the Abraham Accord partners are backing off because of their disinterest in helping Hamas, but B, the perception in the international Arab Muslim world, which supports the Palestinians at any cost from an emotional standpoint. The Abraham Accord countries don't want to become victims of, or they don't want to be seen as standing off against the larger, 1.6 billion, 1.7 billion Muslims, 300 or 400 million Arabs in the Middle East. So they're really isolating themselves. And ironically, it's working against the U.S. administration's plan, and it's working against Israel.
Dan, you raised some very interesting points. Let me raise my points here, and which actually supplement many of the things you just said. Number one, you cannot remove Hamas by remote control. Having, a U.S. military presence in southern Israel and the CENTCOM and representatives of 40 countries sitting, in southern Israel and monitoring Hamas through drones, and I don't know. I mean, this is not a way to bring down Hamas. It doesn't work like that. Number two, if you are sending troops into Gaza, this destabilization force, you need to give this force a clear mandate that it has the authority to shoot at anyone carrying arms inside Gaza. It has a very clear mandate to disarm terrorist groups. It has a very clear mandate to go after the terror infrastructure. This is very important. Now, we don't see that such a force is being given him. First of all, we don't even see such a force being established. And number two, without such a very clear mandate, don't expect it to work. Listen very carefully to what Hamas is saying, and not only Hamas, but the other Palestinian groups. They are saying any international force that replaces Israel inside Gaza will be treated like an occupation force, which means we will open fire at these international forces, even if they are Muslim forces, by the way. And do you think the Arabs and the Muslims who hear this are going to rush to send their soldiers to Gaza? They're not. Hamas and the Palestinian factions are saying, if you want to send troops to Gaza, these troops should only serve as peacekeeping troops. They have no right to interfere with the Palestinian groups inside Gaza. They should only be observers, and they should also sit on the border to report about what Israel does, not what Hamas does and what Palestinian Islamic Jihad. So the Palestinians' whole perspective of international forces is much different than the perspective of Trump and his plan and other international players. And the Arabs and the Muslims, they get it, because the Arabs and the Muslims, they listen to Hamas, they listen to what the Palestinians are saying, and they're not going to get involved with all this mess. Now, regarding the whole issue, going back to the Arabs and normalization with Israel, and if you remember, Dan, I've been saying this since the beginning of the war. If you want to promote normalization between Israel and the Arabs, you need to fight and destroy the enemies of normalization. Why should Mohammed bin Salman, embark on any normalization process with Israel when he sees that Hamas is still standing on its feet? Why should he embark on any normalization process with Israel when he sees the Trump administration, chasing Qatar and bringing Qatar into this whole, situation? Let me remind you that Saudi Arabia and 6 Arab countries cut off their diplomatic ties with Qatar in 2017. They accused Qatar of supporting terrorism. They accused Qatar of supporting radical Islamist groups such as the Muslim Brotherhood and Hamas. And they accused Al Jazeera, which belongs to Qatar, of inciting unrest and instability in their own countries. And do you think the Arabs have really changed their views towards Qatar? No, they understand. And that's why we see that these Arab countries are now taking a step back. I mean, no one is talking about normalization between Israel and Saudi Arabia anymore. What happened to normalization between Israel and Indonesia and all that? What happened to talking about all the talk about expanding normalization between Israel and the Arab and Muslim world? There's no talk about it, and I'll tell you why. Because Hamas and the Islamic Jihad and other Islamist groups are standing on their feet. If you want to encourage or promote normalization and peace, you need to get rid of or destroy and remove the enemies of peace. It's a very simple equation. That's how it works, Dan.
Absolutely, Khaled. I think it's a critically important point that hasn't yet been raised in this entire dialogue about the regional implications of what's happening in the tunnels. And there is a tendency for certainly for Western analysis to focus very tactically on what's happening in Gaza. And I think what we're trying to do here is to offer the regional context, because it goes far beyond this tunnel or that tunnel. It goes to the entire Middle East. Hamas understands very well that every hour that they hold out is an obstacle to further normalization, is an obstacle to peace, security, and prosperity for the region. And that's exactly what Hamas wants. So for them, every hour is an hour of victory that they hold off.
Then hold out. This is where we need to remind our Western viewers and readers of Hamas's slogan. And Hamas's slogan is jihad until victory or martyrdom. So it's either victory or martyrdom. And now, What does victory mean? Victory means I destroy you. And if I don't destroy you, then I'd rather die than surrender. So this is the slogan. This is what is driving these Islamist forces or Islamist groups, not only Hamas, but Islamic Jihad and all these terrorists. And this is very important. This is, as you said, it's jihad, jihad, jihad. People don't understand this ideology. People don't understand this mindset. People tend to underestimate it, or judge it through Western eyes. And this is a big mistake. You need to listen very carefully to what these jihadis are saying. And they are saying, I will continue to fight until I destroy you. And if I don't destroy you, I will become a martyr. There's no third option. These are the only two options. Either I kill you or I die.
You said it very well, Khaled. And I want to just remind our viewers that you and I, together with some of our colleagues at JCFA, Jerusalem Center for Security and Foreign Affairs, are launching the Jihad Alert, which we had called before Hamas and PLO Alert. But I think the Jihad Alert is really what we're talking about, in order to help our Western viewers understand the depth and the nuances, the context, and the strategy behind jihad. I think it will be a contribution not only to the literature, but to policymakers and lawmakers and those in the media that are really trying to understand these complexities that we've been talking about here for the last half hour.
Yep, I agree with you, Dan. And I think it's a very important project, because this is not only about Hamas. People think that Hamas is the only terrorist organization or Islamist organization. In Gaza alone, there are 6 or 7 other terror organizations. You have sister groups in Syria, you have in Lebanon, you have all throughout the Middle East, in Iraq. So, it's not, when we say jihad, it applies to all these groups. It applies to a large group of jihadis and people who share the same ideology.
Absolutely, and we'll look forward to monitoring all of these developments and bring them, as we do every week, to our loyal viewers. And Khaled Abu Toameh, how can I thank you for your always incisive, profound insights into the Middle East the Arab and Muslim worlds. It's always a pleasure and an honor to be in conversation with you.
Thank you, Dan.